2, 3, 4, 5. Good evening to you all. My name is Vincent White, and as history has shown us, the United States makes monumental mistakes that they eventually correct as prolonging pressure and scrutiny comes from its populace. This can be seen through examples of the 1965 Asian Immigration Act, the Emancipation Proclamation, and the desegregation of public schools after the Brown versus Board of Education case. However, one massive issue has been proven to be neglected by the federal government is the legality of marijuana. As most of you know, marijuana continues to be decriminalized in the states since Colorado became the first state to legalize recreational marijuana usage in 2014. Regardless, marijuana usage and possession in any form is punishable on the federal level. And it is still on the federal list of Schedule I drugs, which labels it as one of the most deadly drugs for any sort of consumption. Apologies. This is obviously false. So the placement of marijuana on that list needs to be changed immediately. Today, I will be talking about the process of how the placement of marijuana on that list was a problem from the start, and how problems are created by the government not rescheduling marijuana. So, since it has been proven marijuana is mostly safe for consumption on many levels, how did it end up at the top tier of the federal list? Well, according to an article written in 2015 by Amy Nordrum, titled, "Why is Marijuana a Schedule I Drug?" It happened in 1970. When Congress passed the Controlled Substance Act, which was then signed by President Richard Nixon. To briefly summarize the main point of the act, it placed all drugs on a 5-tier scheduling system in hopes to subject all of them to review. Marijuana was placed at the top tier of the list, temporarily, and after that placement, a committee was formed by the government with intentions of studying marijuana and deciding where it should be permanently placed. After 2 years of research, the committee made 2 reports that basically stated marijuana is not as dangerous as the other severe drugs on the list. However, it should not be legalized by any form because of fears of mass consumption by the youth. With fears of more social division happening in the country, by changing the placement of the drug, the placement of marijuana never changed and has remained at the top tier of the list since the list was created. The nail in the coffin came in 1974 when a Senate hearing was led by Senator James Eastland, when he stated, quote, if the cannabis epidemic, continues to spread at the rate of post-Berkeley period, we may find ourselves saddled with a large population of semi-zombies, of young people acutely afflicted by the amotivational syndrome. The senator is not completely false, as an article posted in 2013 by Psychology Today does link long-term marijuana usage to decreased dopamine levels, which will decrease motivation, and it will make you more prone to amotivational syndrome. However, his argument is only applicable to the possible side effects of younger people consuming it for recreation over long periods of time. The medicinal benefits from marijuana is one of the biggest motivations behind the push for rescheduling. According to an article created by healtheuropa.eu in 2019, medicinal marijuana can help relieve forms of cancer, aid in clinical depression, and help regulate seizures. And to further devalue his point, here on this graph, it shows the deaths related to it shows a lot of deaths of drugs due to overdosage from 1999 to 2015. These 2 lines, the blue one on the bottom and the blue above it, is from cocaine and heroin. And cocaine is a Schedule II drug. And the highest death toll being from opioids, which are mixed between Schedule II and Schedule III. This green line on the very bottom here is from marijuana, and you can see as the numbers, 1999 to 2015, the deaths are virtually 0. Statistics clearly demonstrate that the top tier placement is ludicrous, and it becomes a conflict with the law as states recognize it as not as harmful as the placement make it seem. As of today, there are 11 states in the U.S. that have completely legalized marijuana within its borders, and a total of 28 that have eliminated the possibility of jail time for small possessions of the plant. However, if the government still has a legal strong stance against it, it creates a conflict in the legal system between the states and the Supreme Court. This is not the only conflict with leaving marijuana on the Schedule I, which leads directly to my next point, which talks about the Schedule I drug comparison in the United States. According to DEA.gov, the other drugs listed on Schedule I are heroin, LSD, ecstasy, methaqualone, which is commonly known as Quaaludes, and peyote. The death rate for the other drugs in the first schedule is somewhat high in terms of controlled substances. So the placement of them at the top does seem somewhat warranted. However, where things get incredibly frustrating to me is when you look at the other drugs below marijuana's placement on that same top tier. In the second schedule, there is cocaine, Oxycontin, meth, Adderall, fentanyl, and of course other drugs. Already you can tell by this, this is idiotic, because the government presents the notion that marijuana is more harmful than meth and cocaine. But going even further into this, drugs like oxy, fentanyl, and ketamine are the massive contributors to one of the biggest problems we have seen on home soil, before the quarantine, which is the opioid epidemic. Pharmaceuticals and prescriptions have led to an influx of addictions and deaths from opioids, yet they are placed in a much lower priority than marijuana on the scheduling list. Not prioritizing the right drugs for punishment leads to a problem I foreshadowed earlier, which is indirectly contributing to an epidemic when the government refuses to reform an outdated law that the states have already started to recognize as invalid. If the federal government recognizes the ability for states to change laws best suited to the state's own needs, it should recognize that there are clearly more important drugs to eliminate than a drug that is proven to be more helpful than not. And on that note, that wraps up my point that we need to reschedule marijuana on the federal controlled substance list. It has been legalized in various forms across the United States, and it is taking priority away from the drugs that are plaguing the addicts within our country. The next time you think about the negative effects of marijuana to you personally, I'd like you to remember that there are more people dying every day for something a doctor prescribed to them than marijuana. Thank you.